Why do you say that, Father? You aren't afraid, are you?
No, but I respect some of the superstitions of others. Often they are founded in fact.
Broadcasting live from our Sanctum Sanctorum in Venice, California. This is the Sixth Sense Society. I'm your host, Krista, here with our producer, Michael. And today we are most excited to have back on the show Madame Zulema. And we are going to be talking about one of our favorite topics, which is the Day of the Dead, or Día de Muertos. I'm sure I messed that up, but we are going to be talking to someone who will not mess up the language. And as you know, she's been on the show before. She's a tarot card reader. She has influences in both the Hindu and Buddhist background, and she does spell work. So you can check out the previous shows where she's done shows on protection magic and love magic that were very popular. But before we get started, Michael has a few announcements.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for tuning in. Hopefully we're not going to have too many technical glitches today. We're trying out a little bit of new software, so if we do, it is what it is. But I'm hoping it will improve the show overall, so hang in there with us if it gets a little rocky. But we're excited to be having some new toys to play with. We've got some really great shows coming up. Next week, of course, it's Samhain with Jackie Smith, who is the owner of Coventry Creations, who make those absolutely beautiful spell candles. So join us for that. And it's a way of celebrating our ancestry, both with Madame Zulema today and with Jackie next week. Thanks, guys, who are donating on Ko-Fi to help cover our cost a little bit. We truly appreciate it. You can go to our website and do that if you're so inclined, if you enjoy our show. And we've got some really great guests coming up. As I said, we're going to have Lon Milo Duquette back. We're going to have Jim McGrath back next month. So some really fun stuff. Get all the latest information on our website, sixthsensesociety.com, SIXTH, all spelled out. And so we're not going to take up too much more time for you guys because I really want to get into this topic. So I'm going to kick it back to Krista and take it away, Krista.
Thanks, Michael. And before we get started, we already have a chat. Fionn Clary says hello from Ireland.
Wow.
So isn't that cool? And welcome, Madame Zulema. So thank you, Fionn, for tuning in to us.
I'm so happy to be here again, you guys. See you. I haven't seen you in so long, but it's nice to see your face.
It sure is. I know we're not that far away, and that we haven't seen each other because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming on to talk about this amazing festival and celebration. And I know that many people know about it, but maybe just talk a little bit about what it is and when it's celebrated to begin with.
Well, it depends on which country we're talking about. Remember, Latin America celebrates its own way, and Mexico is the one that made it more. Mexico is more deep into the roots of this. It started with the pre-Hispanic era, with the Aztecs. But I'm going to tell you about where I was raised first, which is Guatemala. And the reason why we celebrate the Day of the Dead, we don't call it the Day of the Dead in Guatemala. We call it the Day of the Saints, because we prefer to say that. Why? Because the 31st is supposedly the day of where the bad spirits fly around the cemeteries. And the 1st of November is the Day of the Saints, which is the children that died, people that died in a peaceful way. So the 31st is people that died violently. But we also remember our ancestors. And the way to honor our ancestors is we remember them every 1st of November. See, here in America, we celebrate Halloween, which is totally different than what's the purpose of the celebration. But in Guatemala, when someone passes away, we mourn them. We bury the person. We mourn them for a day and night with a body present. Then the person gets buried, and then we make a mass 9 days later. And then we get together again, the family and friends. But the way we honor them is to talk about them. Usually turns into something happy. We tell jokes, we eat food. Some people come to somebody's house. Some people just drink coffee or tea. Some other people start drinking a little bit of alcohol. But every year, for the birth of that person, we go, if the person was buried, we go to the cemetery and we make a picnic, whether it's in the morning, it's breakfast, if it's lunch, and we bring the food that the person used to like and talk about the person and bring flowers and talk with family members, and we are there. If the person was cremated, then we gather in somebody's house with the ashes there. If the ashes were spread out in the ocean or somewhere else, we still gather and talk about the person with the photographs, memories, and that's the way we honor them. They never leave our lives. They become our spirit guides, some of them.
So I'm curious about the mask. I've never heard that. So what happens with the mask that you make?
No, I'm sorry. It's the English.
I thought you. Sorry.
It's a mass, a religious mass.
Oh, a mask. I thought you said a mask, and I was like, it's really. So now I understand. Okay, I was going to follow up on that.
Yeah, we make a mass in the church with the priest for the 9 days, so the person can transition, and we say goodbye.
So if someone's body is never recovered, then would it be, you were saying that even if you don't have the ashes, you would still celebrate. Is there anything different if someone's body, like they're lost at war, they're lost at sea? Is there anything special associated with that?
Yes, that's a tough one. When we believe that if a person, especially mothers, if they lose a child, in my family, my aunt lost my cousin to the cause. Guatemala has civil war for 31 years. And he was a doctor, he graduated, and then the contrast, he joined the cause for, against the government and the regime. He disappeared. We never heard from him. So every time there was a mass grave being found after years, she would go there and try to see if they found his body. She almost went mad. So when you don't have that type of closure, it's very difficult. So the family, what we try to do is remember them through a photograph or some belongings. But you cannot do a mass in church or a ritual because we don't know where the body is. We don't know if the person is dead or alive. So that's a tough one. That's something that I don't quite have a lot of information how we do that. But my aunt still today is suffering about that. And I'm talking about 40 years ago.
It's a hard one. I mean, I've gone through that with my brother, whose body was lost at sea, and it's an odd thing because sometimes you think, okay, I've made peace with it, and then all of a sudden, your mind sort of plays tricks and says, well, what if he was alive and he had amnesia? And it is odd. It's definitely kind of a difficult thing. I totally can relate to that one.
It's a feeling like you're in a black hole. Like you go into a black hole with endless possibilities and you can go mad. And that's why you need to do certain rituals on your own. And like you say, to make peace with it is hard. I think you never quite make peace with that.
Yeah, I think that was true for my mother when she was alive. She never really totally made peace with his death. And, that's understandable, with her being the mother and a child being lost. So I totally understand that. So one of the interesting things I came across, and I don't know if this is true, is there was a source that said in your Guatemala that they often would make large kites and fly them, and sometimes they'd put notes to the dead on that. Did that happen when you were a child?
Oh, always. It's been around since after the Conquista. And what this means is the kites are made with tissue paper. And what we're trying to do is send a message to our spirit that are gone, our family members and friends that have been gone. So the flying the kite is getting in touch with them. But there's many things to get in touch with them. When you put a candle at home with a picture, the day of the saints, you're guiding them through the light to come home to where they were with your energy. The kite also means releasing them and saying, I am here, you can go, don't worry about me, or thank you for taking care of me. But the kite represents the connection of, I want to get close to the sky as much as possible to see you, to be with you, to feel you. That's going on forever. It's beautiful.
That really is. I love that.
Some kites are humongous, like 25 feet. I mean, it's huge.
Are there any particular themes that they put into the kites, or is it just super creative and people put in what they feel like putting in?
It's very creative, and sometimes it even turns political. They pray for Guatemala. They say, please make sure the president cares about us. Or it could be political too. It could be many things. It could be, take care of my grandma, or how are you guys? It could be endless possibilities. It is personal, but sometimes it's the collective of the town. And it only happens in a town going towards Chimaltenango, which is after San Lucas. I used to live around there for a while. And it gets crazy. You have to get there very early, or you cannot even drive. It's a very tiny town. Mm-hmm. And in November, which is the time when this happens, we have a lot of wind, always. So they always fly up most of the time.
I think that's amazing. I'll have to go and look some photographs. I really, really like that idea. I've just never heard about it before. So it's really beautiful. Yeah. Are those your ancestors in the background there?
Yes. I don't know if I can make the camera close to show you, but today, oh my God, I don't know what I did. Hold on. Can you see me?
Yeah, it's still, but yeah, you moved, they're kind of moved to the side now. I can only see the bottom person. It looks like a woman and a man.
Okay, okay, hold on.
There you go.
This is my father-in-law. I don't know if you can see him.
Mm-hmm.
This is my grandmother.
Oh, she's lovely.
This is my daughter's father. He passed away, the small daughter. And this is Emmy's grandmother. This is my father. And these here are Nico and Lucas, which were dogs from the family. Nico was my daughter's pet for a long time. And then when she had a baby, she had to give it to my brother. And so Nico passed away with my brother. And he was a very, very smart dog, to the point that we always saw through his eyes somebody in there taking care of us. There was somebody in the dog's eyes that was there with us. I don't know how to explain it. He would look at us a certain way, especially with my daughter, that she would freak out and say, Mom, I see someone in there.
I think that's true of dogs particularly. I've met a couple dogs. I had when I was a child that was like that. And then there was this beautiful big dog that was part wolf. I think his name was Joe. And he used to come into the Bodhi Tree bookstore. And there was something very wise and protective and gentle. And I always just would go up and hug him. And his owner was a British fellow. And I never would ask his name. I've even forgotten it now, but I did at some point know his name. And he said he had that effect, the dog had that effect on everybody. And he was really super gentle and he was huge. He was just a huge dog. I even had a dream about him once. It was like, there's like a shaman in that dog, you know?
Yeah,
and,
there was a connection with you because you are very intuitive and spiritual. But let me tell you a quick short story. Nico, my daughter was living with her father for a while. We were separated and she was in her 20s, I think. I don't remember quite well. And then her father got a big dog, a big, huge dog, beautiful brown Rottweiler. And so my daughter used to have cushions in her bed that she loved. And she would always find them on the floor and chewed up. And so she would get upset with the big dog. And I forgot his name right now. It's going to come. And she always would tell him, you're a bad dog, you're a bad dog. And she always would cuddle Nico, which was a schnauzer, a small schnauzer. And then one day she acted like she was leaving, but she came back peeking. And she saw that Nico was on top of the bed, throwing the cushions on the floor so the big dog would chew on them. That's how smart he was.
Oh, wow.
That's incredible.
Huh.
He was incredible.
They're definitely wise animals, and I remember, the way we found out about obviously what some people do call Day of the Dead, at least in LA, is through Hollywood Forever celebration.
Yes.
That we've gone to twice, and it really blew me away how much beauty and effort that people put into making these incredible altars. Mm-hmm. And there's a woman, Nisha, from the Bodhi Tree. She would participate with Mario, and they would do one specifically for, I believe it was only cats, but it was an animal altar because they were really into it. Anybody, I guess, could go and sort of participate. Anyone can go. They're unfortunately not able to do it this year. And I thought that was very touching. So just like you were saying that the kites became political, it sounds like some of the tradition has sort of morphed into, other things of celebrating the dead, including people that have very close connection to their animals.
Yeah, I have been in the Hollywood Forever twice also. Very beautiful, very touching. And I was so lucky the first time I went there to, I don't know if you are familiar with a Mexican singer. She was born in Minnesota. She's an anthropologist, and now she lives in Oaxaca. And she's Lila Downs. And she has a song. Well, she sings a song that's an old song, but she gives it a twist that's called La Sandunga. And that song says, "Child, when I go away, please don't cry for me. Sing me La Sandunga, because that way I'll never die. I will always live." It's so beautiful.
I love that.
Yes. And I saw her there, and they had in the stage a huge skull, and she came out of the skull singing La Sandunga.
Oh.
It was mind-blowing, and I paid only $10 to go see that. And now you have to pay over $100 to see her. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's very inexpensive to go, I know, to the Hollywood Forever celebration. And for those that don't know about these large celebrations across the world, is that they often are held, at least, well, it seems like often there are some cemeteries and people decorate the altars. Sometimes it takes months for people to design these huge skeletons with food, and they're dressed incredibly beautifully with their faces painted with the sort of skeletal look. And I'm curious, do you know why that particular skeletal look became so popular and powerful? Because you recognize it right away as reflecting the celebration, just the bright colors. And it's really remarkable when most, there are people that are afraid of skeletons and skulls, and that's such a huge part of it.
Yeah. It depends, we can talk about this a long time, but there's something called Calaveritas in Mexico, which is a child that one of his family members or grandfather passed away. There's so many things in the Mexican culture about the Day of the Dead that are beautiful, but come from before La Conquista, which means from Aztecs. And if I go back, this child lost his grandfather, but he didn't have any money. So Las Calaveritas is a tradition of bringing something to the dead, because they know when the person dies, the flesh gets away from the body, and so you only see the skull. And so the child brought bread and certain candy that the grandfather liked to eat. So Las Calaveritas means bringing, the calavera means skull, or the whole skeletal. And what it means is something to be happy about. For example, we make the faces and we put the makeup on to remind us of memento mori. What does that mean? We're all going to get there. In Western society, we don't deal with death. We hide it. When people get older and sick, we put them away in places like homes. In my culture and in Mexico, you take them in your house. They die with you. Even if you don't have any money, you bring them to you and they die with you. here is fear because we are obsessed with youth. We think we're going to live forever. In fact, look at the name of the cemetery in Hollywood, Forever.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's forever, dear. We know that from Buddhism and all these religions, but is to lose the fear and to get in touch with the fact that death is with us constantly. When I went to Israel, I remember that people, even in Israel, I noticed that people have the mezuzah at the doors and they kiss it like that before they go out, and they kiss it back when they come in. And I asked him, my friend, why you do that? And he says, because I don't know if I'm coming back. A bomb can be thrown and I might be dead in a minute. So we're constantly reminded of death as a fact, correct? Here you hide it from children. You make it Halloween and fun. But death is where all we are going. It's our transition. Is the new life that we will experience. And so I am so blessed that I grew up in Guatemala because we're in touch with it. More Mexico than Guatemala. Mexico is off the scale. I want to invite you one day to come with me to Oaxaca for the Day of the Dead.
Oh, I was fortunate for me that I ran into Tibetan Buddhism very early on in my life. And so when I was in my 20s, I went to the cremation of Trungpa Rinpoche in Vermont. Wow. And it was unbelievable. I mean, it's because they also obviously embrace death. In fact, you can say Tibetan Buddhism wants you to think every day about death and that you're impermanent and what are you going to do about it? you know you're going to die. So what are you going to do about it? So that's one reason they use it as a motivation. But they also, as you know, have practices for the transition of death. And so I was really lucky. And to be amidst, I'll never forget how celebratory it felt. You got to circle the body of Trungpa Rinpoche, which was in this sort of pillar. Mm-hmm. And there were all these amazing masters, lamas. They were practicing and playing all of the instruments and really setting the tone. And so as you're, going around there, you could just feel all this energy. And I saw things in the sky like everyone else. They were taking pictures of their rainbows. There was a rainbow around the sun. And when you experience it like that, it does sink into your being like, okay, maybe I have it wrong about death. Death is something else, and it's incredible, And that's not to say we shouldn't have any fears about suffering and, dying from illness. And that's kind of human, I think. But I'm glad I got to experience that early on to show that death is part of life. And that's another reason why I really love the celebration of Day of the Dead here, wherever it is, because of that you do feel more that connection to life and not morbid and that kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm going to give you a thought. I don't know if it was Plato or Socrates, and correct whoever wants to correct me if I'm wrong. He said, practice dying. And if I told you right now, you're going to live forever, you're not going to get up tomorrow with the same zest. If we know that we're going to die one day, and the word dying is, especially in the tarot, it means transition, correct? So when we say dying, what we should say is transitioning. We have to strive to have a good death. Live a good life and you will have a good death. So I think humanity, especially now with COVID, we're more in touch with it. The reason why a lot of people here in the West are suffering with mental health problems, which is on the rise, is because they can't digest what's happening. People are dying, their loved ones, we cannot even see them. So not seeing someone that you love after dying is very traumatic. So now I think we're going to learn to live with death after this. I hope we learn from this and value what's important, our loved ones, our old people, our elderly, and teach children about it without fear.
Yeah, and I agree with you to value the older and the elderly. It's not, at least amongst sort of, I would say, a good part of Western culture, it's not really supported. Though I know from my English teacher, she was African American, and she said, that she always felt it was kind of strange the way that white people were with their relatives. And for instance, if somebody died, you would get on the Greyhound bus to go to their funeral. And it doesn't matter if you liked them, you got along with them, that was part of her culture, is that they also embraced death differently than, we were talking about, sort of the white version versus the black. And I agree with her, it was true. And again, this is a general statement, but I could see that, and maybe you're right. The pandemic will show us, hopefully, that we should be more aware of death and the elderly. And but we'll see, because sometimes it doesn't sink in. Once things end, then people sometimes go back to what they were before. But speaking of the pandemic, what would you suggest in terms of people that normally like to celebrate with gatherings during this time? What could they do to feel more connected? Or could you suggest some simple home altars if people are not familiar with doing that?
You mean by feeling connected to their loved ones that passed away?
Yeah, and to participate in this time of year where people celebrate the dead, in other cultures too, including the Celtic culture, and but some like to do it in groups, whether they're small groups or large groups. And how could they accommodate it this year if they can't go out in a group? Let's say they're older and they still want to stay in the home, or there is the gathering that normally gathers is not happening. So what could they do to feel more connected through the pandemic?
Thank God we have an evil that is a sort of it's a blade of two, it's a double blade, which is internet, is a telephone, FaceTime, Zoom. I mean, bless these people that invented this. Let's use it. Let's get in touch. People are texting. Don't text. Look at the people's faces, please. Get into Zoom and look at people's faces. Now, gatherings, I particularly a person that needs hugging, touching, and being. I didn't celebrate my birthday this year, because if I'm not going to be able to hug my friends, forget it. I don't want to do it. But Zoom and FaceTime can help you see people's expressions, and you can go with your hands like this and tell them kind words, and you can do that. Now, if you want to go be in a group, there's people that are doing things in parks at the edge of the beach. If you have availability to open spaces, wearing the mask, sadly, we have two groups of people in the States right now. I don't know in the world, but in the States, some people don't believe that the virus is that lethal. They don't wear the mask. And they're going to gather. And some people do believe it. And they're so afraid. For example, I have a neighbor right here in my building that we're all worried about him because he is becoming psychotic, because he's so afraid of the virus. And we even have to bring him food to the door because he doesn't go to the market. So we need community. We need to build a network, a net that's tight. Mm-hmm. Talk to your neighbor, talk to your mom, your grandmother, keep in touch. Because you feel bad and depressed, don't stop talking to your family. If you're depressed, call them. I mean, don't suffer by yourself. You don't have to. FaceTime, you can see their faces if you have that availability. I hope. Elderly people, that's a problem if they don't know how to use the internet or, AI. So try to be in touch as much as you can. And if you have a grandmother or a grandfather that is somewhere by themselves, wear a mask or a plastic bag all over your body if you want. But go. I saw a photo on Instagram of a grandmother with a grandchild with a screen of plastic, and they grabbed each other from the plastic was in the middle and they were hugging.
Aww.
The plastic was protecting them, but they were hugging and touching. So we need that, because there's a lot of people that are suffering a lot from being away from their loved ones.
Yeah, it is very hard when they're separated by force like that. Yeah. So that's a fun story. I like the plastic story. So I wanted to ask your opinion about, I know marigolds are popular is it the Mexican culture that uses them a lot in the celebration? And do you know what the meaning of the marigold? I mean, obviously it's a bright color like the sun, so I'd assume it might be associated with the sun.
In Guatemala, we use calla lilies, the white ones. They're gorgeous for our dead, calla lilies. In Mexico, they use the marigolds because they make a cross with the flowers in the graves, and that's a visual for the spirit to see where they are.
Like a beacon.
Yes. Also incense, so they can smell, or the foods that we cook for them that they loved, so we still believe that they can smell the food and they can still see. And I'm sure we don't understand if that's possible, but probably it is, because I don't know if you have, but I have had people that have passed away visit me, my mom too. So if they visit, that means that they can see us.
Yes, I have definitely felt visitations from pretty much all my relatives that have passed, except maybe my grandfather. Maybe he did visit, but I didn't know. I was only in my 20s, so I'm not sure if he did. But I also believe we did a show on Rudolf Steiner, and Steiner is a big proponent of staying connected to the dead and building relationships that are active. And he has these sort of a theory about how it helps them and you help them. And I'm sure that you know that many cultures have everyday altars to their ancestors. It isn't just, one time in the year, but they ask the ancestors to help them all the time.
If I may say something, I'm a widow, my second marriage, and my husband passed away. And he, at the time, wasn't speaking to my daughter for a week or so. They had a little misunderstanding, and he passed away. But he came and visited me here in my apartment in Santa Monica, and my daughter was talking to me facing the hallway, and the back of my back was to the hallway, and my her face went really, she went like, oh, like this. And I said, what's wrong? And I looked around and I didn't see anything. But she said there was a tall figure with the face against the wall and the eyes closed, like weeping. So I grabbed her by the hand and I said, come in the hallway with me. And she didn't want to go in the hallway. And I walked through the hallway and I said, Chiqui, because that's what we used to call her father. I know you're here and I know that you want to resolve with Amy the problems that you have. She's okay. Take care of her. When I'm not around, you are around. Please take care of her. And my daughter came down, and I know he has visited many times. And sometimes I fight with him and I'm angry for things that happened in the past. But I forgave him and I said, the only thing you can do for me now is take care of her, please. And I know that he does. I know.
So do you think that some family members want to be the spirit guardians and others maybe have other things they go on to do? It seems like from my experience, certain relatives of mine are easier to connect with. And then, like, for instance, my grandmother, who I was quite close to before she died, and I was with her when she died, I don't see her that often, but all of a sudden I'll have a dream with her in it. So whereas, my mother I might see more often. So do you feel like that's true? And maybe why would that be true?
Let me ask you something quickly. Did she die with you? You were looking at her face?
No, she died in Sonoma. I wasn't there. My grandmother.
Yes.
Well, I was sort of not at the moment of death. I was trying to be there at the moment of death. And she did one of those numbers where you get up and go and then she dies. But there was like a week where she was almost dying in the hospital. And so I was always there as much as possible. So I wasn't really there at the moment, the exact moment.
You got a connection with her. My grandmother died in my arms, looking in my eyes. I was lucky. But I have to tell you this story quickly. I was sitting in the edge of her bed, and my grandfather and the smallest daughter, which was my grandfather, it was her second husband, they both said, I have to go to the store and get her something because she was thirsty. So I was putting wet cottons in her mouth so she could suck on them because, you start going and the throat dries. And so but she was at the last stage. So they were so scared, they left. So she turned towards her left side, and I kneel next to her, and I was looking at her eyes. And the moment she passed, her eyes were opaque, like when you have a crystal and you go, that's what I saw in her eyes.
Wow.
And then Krista, oh, my hair is going up in the back of my head. Then I smelled roses. The smell of fresh roses. She loved roses.
Aw.
And then the smell went away. And then I don't want to tell you the rest, because in Guatemala, we put a handkerchief so her mouth won't get open and stay open. And then my grandfather came in and he started screaming, and but they left me alone with her because they were freaking out. And I thank her for that, because she was looking straight into my eyes when her spirit left her. And now I want to become a death doula because of that.
I think you are one. That's an incredible story. I mean, you helped her to transition.
And also I have not helped, but I have seen other people died in hospitals, because I am a nurse practitioner. So that made me feel I shouldn't be afraid of this. I'm going to dig into it deeper. And so when somebody close to me committed suicide, I started studying the Day of the Dead, and I started studying the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and I was very into it, for a while. I became obsessed. And in every culture, even in the Tibetan culture, when somebody dies of natural causes, they go somewhere, right? And when somebody commits suicide, they go somewhere else, and vice versa. I mean, etc. But yeah, I mean, the Catholic Church came and made something terrible, in my view, that if somebody committed suicide, they would not go to heaven, which I think is not true.
We were talking about suicide on the last show with Holly. We were doing ghost hunting, because obviously a lot of the ghost stories can have suicides associated. And Michael and I had something remarkable happen the last time we were at the Hollywood Forever celebration. I think it was 2017. And we had lost a friend of ours through suicide, Andrew. I think it was like 2010. And I really didn't know where he was buried. Michael said he thought he knew, but Michael and I were walking around the daytime at Hollywood Forever for the Day of the Dead that year. And Michael said, let's just go this way. Let's cut through. I just want to go on this path, just intuitively. And it was just kind of, nothing special. And so we're walking through the graves, and it literally led to his grave. And I was amazed. I mean, I didn't know he was buried at the Hollywood Forever. And I was thinking of him, but not like that. And it was just Michael, he just got this intuition, and I took some pictures, and I said, wow, this works even when you're not trying, that people reach out to you. And so, I agree with you about the suicide. I don't think it's something obviously we want to try to prevent, but I don't think they're punished for it. They're already suffering. Why would they be punished more? It's kind of not right to me, So,
yeah.
But I would say that based on my study of spirituality and death, perhaps accidents and people dying violently can cause confusion, if nothing else. And I've always thought there were helpers for people, no matter what, no matter who you are when you die.
Talking about helpers, you are a person that is very connected to animals. I am very connected to dogs since I'm a little girl. And in the Aztec culture, when somebody died, when children die especially, they would go, like in the Aztecs, they also have different places where children go. So in the Aztec culture, there is a dog. I forgot how to pronounce his name, and I don't want to try because my tongue is going to go like a taco. But I know people that are listening to the show are going to know which dog it is. It's a Chihuahua. which has no hair. It's a Mexican, specifically Chihuahua, that they're trying to conserve now because it's almost extinct. It's very expensive. So that dog, the Aztecs believe, that would help the children, come to the children, pick them up, and take them across the river to go to the other side. So there's helpers. Yes.
I love the dog.
Yes.
So I was going to mention too, you were talking about the Aztec, how it comes through the Aztec tradition. And isn't there a particular goddess, the Lady of the Dead, that is connected to at least the Aztec tradition? And do you know about her and how is she depicted?
Is Mictectacuatl.
Excellent.
Mictectacuatl. I don't know. It's a dialect, so it's very hard to pronounce. But I don't know a lot about her. But I noticed that in ancient cultures, they always picture death as a female energy. Have you noticed that? So Gaia is also a receptor of the dead and is female, right? So what it means is she was a nurturer of, when you die, you're going to be here with me. But also, she looks fierce because what she says is, you're not going to get lost. You'll be in my regazo. We mean regazo means where your thighs are with your arms down, where you take a child.
Oh.
So that means I'm fierce because I'm not going to let you get lost.
I found one picture of her where she's depicted with a flayed body and her jaw is open, according to this one. No, I don't have it, no. And supposedly her jaw is open to swallow the stars during the day. And that sounded a little like Nuit for some reason. I mean, even though they look different, it reminded me of the Egyptian Nuit because of the whole night and star thing. And you're right. I know Ereshkigal is, I forget which culture is connected to the dead, and Inanna connected to the dead. And I think Isis has both heaven and the underworld, as you know, in her story. So yes, the maybe because woman and Mother Nature is connected to life and death.
Because I don't want to say because the female energy gives life, right? And when that life goes away, when the child dies, you feel it in your wound. If you're a mother, or your sister dies, or your mother, you feel it. We all feel it in the chakra of the solar plexus. Is the solar plexus below the navel? We feel it there also. Also the heart, of course, but we feel it there. So when a person passes away physically to a better life, these, let me read it again. Mictecatichicuatl, the goddess, when her jaw is open with the stars, is because you're going to become part of the universe and she's going to help you. She's the bridge. She will not get you get lost. You're not getting lost. You're going to be part of the whole. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I love that cosmic interpretation of her. But I'd never come across her name. I think I have heard people refer to Lady of the Dead or something like that. But I kind of thought that was just kind of a general, like, oh, the Lady of the Dead, not a very specific goddess. So it was really nice to be introduced to her.
There's also the Saint Death, which is a skull with a hat and everything, like the Diego Rivera one, you know, the Katrina. But the people in the drug world, they worship her. Have you heard about it?
I have.
They have altars, and people go there and say, please let the drug go through with no problems. I don't know what they say, but she protects them also. So death is always portrayed as female. Even Kali, the destroyer and the creator, right? She's fierce. So it is because when a mother is going to lose a child, she becomes fierce, you know. It's so much to talk about, Krista. My mind is going nuts.
Well, you know, another thing I learned about was skull literature, Calaveras literarias, which is late. It was established later in time, like in the 1800s. And I mean, you were talking about it earlier, where you go and you talk about you're the person that has died and you tell funny stories, but evidently it's become like these little poems, these funny anecdotes. And I read one online that was when Donald Trump was first president, that, somebody that was doing sort of a mockery of him and going into the underworld and how the Lady Death was going to, deal with him. And I think he was called Big Mouth or something like that. I can't remember. It was actually quite funny. And I thought that was really cool. I love that idea of creating a specific kind of literature. And I think they're short. And like I said, they're meant to be either sarcastic or funny or so. Have you heard that term before? It sounds like, what you said was very similar when you first started talking about what you would do at the graves of your family.
Yeah, no, no, I would have to, I'm not sure what it is. But I want to mention something that when I went to Italy and I went to Rome, in a lot of the churches, you find coffins that are made out of glass. And they have the people that have passed away called saints, like Santa Teresa, Santa Cecilia, and all these. They save their skulls and they embellish them with jewels. Let me show you a book that I bought that I love. And this is a man, his name is Paul Codonaris, and he goes all over the world and photographs these things. And I want to show you the book.
Oh, wow.
Look at this.
Huh. So I see. Oh, yeah, they're decorated. Wow. Heavenly bodies.
And you see the jewels. I mean, look at this one.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
And,
wow.
and so I'm having a senior moment, and I don't know why I mentioned that.
That's all right. It's all connected to the topic anyway, Well, you were talking about going to Italy and seeing the glass
yes,
coffins.
Yes.
And
yes. And so a lot of people, I notice most people that would go to the glass and they would go and not look at it, but I would go and sit down there and try to see. First of all, I will go, oh my God, that ring is so beautiful. If I take it from you, would you be upset with me? Because I loved you early. But then I will notice that they were embellished because these people did beautiful things. So the jewels remind us that these people they went back to the earth, and those stones came from the earth, and they still shine among us. And people worship them. But most of the Western tourists will avoid the area.
That's too bad. I have to admit, I find skeletal remains, generally speaking, really interesting. Like when I've gone to Necromancer in Hollywood, I don't know if it's still open, and they have like the skull of a crow, or I think they're beautiful. And I sometimes like to imagine all of us walking around as skeletons to make me realize we're all equal. Just the death is the great equalizer. And I said, well, we're all skeletons. We all have a skeleton, and thank goodness we have them. But I could see where some people they find it creepy for some reason.
Well, you have to take a trip now to Oaxaca and one to Rome with me, because there's a church called La Chiesa de la Morte e la Prega, which means the Church of Death and Praying. And you go in that church, Krista, and it's got skulls all over, and there's a woman, a figurine of a woman with a beautiful velvet clothes, and she's got a skull in her hand, and she has it like this, like a skull, and she's like looking at it, like saying, "This is where we all are going." But that church, when the Black Death was around Europe, people used to bring. There were so many people would bring their dead and put them on the door, so the priest and the people that work inside the church is close to a river. Oh God, please help me. The river that's in Trastevere, there's the river. Anyway, the church had a hole that they would just dump the bodies in the river.
Ooh.
Because they had nowhere else to put them. But because Rome had a decree that you had to bury your dead outside the city. But you go in that church, Krista, and it smells like death. Not bad. It's not a foul smell. It's a smell like death, and I can't explain it. I'll take you one day. I hope we can do it. You will understand.
Wow. That I never heard of that. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
No, it's something I think that, I mean, I agree that you with the Western world is sort of not totally good with it, but there have been changes, like the hospice movement really helped with bringing death into the public eye, and people that train to be in the hospice and see it as a calling. And there is something about, I think, when young people are exposed to death early, whether it's a family member or a pet, can also, that really helps, is when families don't hide it. Okay, this is, the dog that died, and let's, take a look before the dog is buried or cremated. And it helps. It helps if it's just like you said, you grew up in a culture where it was just part of your world. So you have a healthy relationship with it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's healthy. I think it's realistic. Is part of life. I'm not saying I'm looking forward and I'll be all singing in my death. I hope so. If I take enough drugs. But who said I want to arrive at my death drunk, in love, and was it Oscar Wilde?
Probably. It sounds like something he would say.
Right. And I have a good one here that is called Madre Mezcal from Mexico.
Mhm.
And look what it says. I hope you can say, look what it says right
Los
there.
Muertos.
Right.
Huh.
So when I get close, I'm just going to have a little of my mezcal to help me, and I'll call Nico to help me transition the river.
Well, I think it's human to be afraid of death on some level, but then you hear things like, I believe there was a documentary of the previous Karmapa, the 17th Karmapa, and he was dying in the hospital, and he supposedly said that, nothing happens, that this wasn't a big deal. And then we also have a friend that was almost killed through an attack. And she said it was like she just kind of stood outside her body. Like it was not such a big deal, that part. And then she survived it. But wow. So, yeah, it's interesting when you hear people's like survival stories, or people that have some consciousness of dying, what they say. And I think the state of mind is important. And in that way, if one can philosophically practice something to prepare yourself for death, and that it's like everything else, it gives you a better chance to go through it in a way that is more conscious.
Oh, there's a lot of books out there. There's one called Preparing to Die. That's wonderful. I'm reading it right now. And I wanted to mention something. Have you been exposed to a situation where oh my God, I'm going to die here. I'm going to die. And you have felt that feeling of, okay, I'm going to let go. Have you ever had that?
I've had only a feeling of letting go. When I was really sick, I was losing a lot of blood due to these fibroids, and I even had to have some transfusions. And so there was one day I went to the emergency room, and I just couldn't stop bleeding for quite a long time. So by the time they got to me, I was sort of really getting out of it. They couldn't really find my vein, and I suddenly just felt like so blissful. Like I can't really say I was leaving my body, but I just felt peaceful. Yeah. And it was, it was fine, but up to that, before that point, it was really painful, and I was just in pain. I wouldn't even say I was afraid. I was just so much in pain. And so that's the closest I think I've ever come to feeling something like that.
So what I ask you, because I know you have been exposed to death, and your brother disappeared, and what you have, we talked about it in our drives to the Gnostic Society. I was also exposed in the ocean in Guatemala, almost drowned. And I remember there was a point where I said, I can't struggle anymore. And there's a point where I felt what you're saying. Okay. But the first thing that came into my mind was, what is he going to tell my daughters? What are they going to feel? They're going to be okay. And I felt like I have to let go. And I would see the waves coming. I was way up in the ocean. But if we tell this to people that are afraid of death, I want everybody out there that's afraid of dying, that there's a point where your body says, and your psychic accepts it with peace, unless you're being tortured. I hope not. You know, if you have pain, right now there's a lot of good things that the medical system has that take the
Yeah.
pain away, including mezcal. But if you don't have pain and there's a point where your body says, okay, I'm ready, it's peaceful, it's sweet in a way. I saw it in my grandmother when she
Yeah.
let go and she said, okay, I'm not going to struggle. That's it.
Yeah, that letting go.
Yeah.
That's and that's I think we do have natural endorphins and things to help us with that letting go, and like that's one thing again I like about the Tibetan culture is they teach the signs of dying through illness, so they can see what stage a person's at, and you can do practices to help you prepare for that stage so that you can do it more easily. And you can also have someone pray for you, which I like too, that idea that someone's praying for you before you die and after you die. With my grandmother, I was giving her some little Tibetan medicine that I sort of slipped into her while she was sleeping, and I would go every day to see her, and it was quite quite a difficult experience because she was suffering at times. But I'm so glad I went through with her.
We have with my brother and I have a very deep connection, and I have spoken to him and my mom. With drinks, without drinks, we have talked about this, and I said, dear brother, if I ever get caught in the system of the hospital and they put tubes on me, but I'm dying and they don't let me die, you come in there and you help me die somehow, or I'll come and haunt you. He told me to promise, and he promised me he'll do that for me and I'll do it for him, because also the system here prolongs your life beyond what you're supposed to live.
Yes, that can happen for sure, where you're just in this, suspended animation, really.
Right.
It's not
Your brain is
healthy.
dead, your body's dead, but they're pumping these things in you. I don't agree with that either. One of the things that also I have trouble with the Tibetan Book of the Dead is that they have tons of rituals. And also one of the rituals that stuck to me is that you put the person on I forgot which one. You guys check it. Is the right side or the left side? Because it has to do with the side you're in. And then you whisper certain mantras in the person's ear. And they talk about, I don't want to say it because people should read it. It's a lot. But there's a lot of things that when I read it, I said, no way. How do they know this? How? The 49 days, the bardo, come on. The more I read about it, the more I understand it. So it's important that when you're getting there to the final stages of your life, to have a positive image in your head, because you're going to reflect that image in the afterlife.
Absolutely. So we're pretty close to the end. And what is the best place for people to find you? Is Instagram a good place to find you?
Instagram is good, Madame Zulema, but also they can email me at madamezulema@gmail.com. They can find me on Yelp. They Google me and they'll find me. And
So yes, and Madame Zulema does tarot readings, and I know you do clearings for homes. When I don't know if you're doing them now, but and you do spell work for people more by word of mouth. My understanding is.
Yeah.
So, is there anything more you want to say about the celebration, just from your personal point of view, or anything you want to add before we close out the show?
I want to add something very important, that, talking about the West, that the Disney firm tried to buy in Bank on the Day of the Day in 2013, and the Mexicans went crazy because, everything is, okay, money, you can buy everything with money, and this proves you can't, because the Mexicans and the Mexican government and the people went against it, and Disney could not trademark the Day of the Dead because they were trying. Did you know that?
I did not know they were trying to trademark. Shame on Disney.
And then it came the movie Coco. Did you see that movie?
I've seen previews. I have not watched it, though.
It's beautiful.
Is it?
And so you cannot even buy death with money.
I love that.
So what it's saying is, remember that everything that's around you, you're not going to take with you. You're going to take the love you give and get, and the food you eat, and the mezcal you drink, and every dance you make, and be happy to have a good life so you have a good death.
Yes, I love
Have
that.
to live with.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed seeing you here again. And thank you all for listening in. We look forward to next time as we continue to journey together studying the esoteric and the obscure. Have a wonderful week.